In this video, we're going to continue demonstrating commenting, and in particular, we're going to show some examples. So for our sample file, I'm going to go back to the coin flip experiment that we did in the beginning JavaScript class. You remember this was one of the assignments. I asked you to virtually flip a coin 1,047 times, just sort of a random huge number, and then to show the results to demonstrate the probability of heads and tails, both as an integer value of, the count of how many and in a percentage. This required just a little bit of programming, a few functions. And as you can see, I have a very simple version of this. The graphic interface here is very simple. Just for example, we may use commenting in, and again, like I said, in HTML commenting, not super common. I really don't usually do it very much at all, but one use you could use it for is to talk about the version right up front here, just to give a sense right at the beginning of the code file. And again, this is in particular because we have everything combined into one file. Remember, we talked about in intermediate HTML that it actually is best practice to put your CSS into a separate file. I haven't done that here, but we will be doing that in the rest of the class that we're doing, just for simplicity's sake, so we can see all three types of coding in one file. I've left it alone just as a single file for right now. But again, do remember that that best practice that we want to, normally speaking, we want to shift this over into its own file. Here we are in our CSS part of the file. We could, and again, I don't want to superfluously comment, but again, just to show you how commenting works, you might use a comment, a simple comment like this just to differentiate. And then let's just say if we had we could do another section here. You would really only need to do this if you had a really lengthy and complex CSS page and you were trying to help yourself and others to differentiate the sort of structure among the different CSS sections. So that's just one example of how the CSS commenting might be helpful. The most helpful thing I usually use it for is to comment out things when I'm testing out different styles and seeing how things look, but I don't want to lose or forget the thing that I had before. So I comment it out, try it, and then bring it back to life. But since we've done that type already, I wanted to show you this new type, which is really more about documenting your work. And then finally, we get down to our script at the bottom, and here's our JavaScript. So commenting is really the most significant in actual programming languages, not just markup languages like HTML and CSS, because here's really where you're using logic. So for example, here, if you wanted to just give a brief explanation of the randomizer function, especially giving what values it actually returns. So you could also do something like this, just to give a sense that this is the trigger function. This is the function that is triggered by the HTML page. And again, you could give a sense of the scope of the function, just that it both generates values and displays them to the page. This is technically a multi-line function. I could code it this way as well. I have to say though, it's much easier just to do that double slash. That's right on the keyboard. You don't need a shift key to do it. So I am usually in the habit of using that double slash, even when I'm doing multi-lines in the way that I did in the first one. But again, you definitely can use the multi-line formatting, and you probably should technically. And again, throughout your code, you can use that quick double slash just to get rid of some code, to test out some things. And as I said, you can also do that interlinear kind of commenting. So here it's going to read this part of the line, and it will ignore this part of the line. But then when the line is done, once it gets off of that line, it'll go back to reading the code like normal. So that's that single line, multi-line difference. I don't recommend this as something in your final code necessarily, but except very sparingly. This is not a bad example of it because it's actually just giving a reminder of the sorts of values that you're going to get back from that function. So again, just to reinforce the idea, It does not at all affect anything about the actual functioning of the code. Commenting is really just to provide some documentation to use for debugging, providing those notes or hints for yourself if you've got to put down a project, come back later. And some of those you want to remove when the project is considered final, and some you do want to keep in there. Again, one like this, you would want to keep in there for documentation purposes. So those are the basic principles of commenting. It's not complicated. It doesn't really affect our coding, but it is a good habit to get into if you really want to conform to those best practices like a programmer.